Hello out there in all of time and space, and welcome to What If Doctor Who Wasn't Cancelled? Today we'll be going over the alternative universe where Doctor Who wasn't axed in 1989 and instead lived on to the 90s. Firstly, I just want to say that I've gotten a lot of inspiration for this series from Optical Spectre's series. So now that that's out of the way, let's begin. So it's 1989 and the show is on the rocks. BBC One decides to cancel Doctor Who after 26 years on air. However, the head controller on BBC Two was more than happy to take Doctor Who from BBC One, and so the show was finally given a new home. John Nathan Turner did want to quit his role, but he was persuaded to stay for one more season to give a natural transition from BBC One to BBC Two. However, he would allow his replacement to work alongside him for the final two serials of the season. Sylvester McCoy expressed a desire to leave the show after season 27, as well as Sophie Aldred. However, McCoy was persuaded to stay for one more season, following season 27 after the show was renewed up to 1993. However, Sophie Aldred decided to leave the show halfway through the season. Andrew Cartmel stayed on as script editor for the show upon its move to BBC Two after finding out that the show was stable to stay for another few years. With Aldred leaving, the show needed to find a new companion, and eventually they decided to cast Julia Swahala as Kate. However, in our world, she played Emma, the Doctor's fiancée in The Curse of Fatal Death. The serials for this season would have consisted of 2 4-parters, 1 3-parter, and 1 serial with 1 episode. The TARDIS interior was changed due to the old one being taken down, and it was also in a big state of disrepair. The new interior would look entirely different to the majority of the older TARDIS interiors, however the exterior would remain the same. The first serial would have been the 3-part story called Earthaid, which aired from the 26th of September 1990 to the 10th of October 1990. The serial would see the Doctor and Ace crash into a ship using some clever production tricks. The old TARDIS exterior was on the screen for one final time. Once the Doctor and Ace had crashed onto the ship, the two would leave the TARDIS to find the ship was from Earth, and in the future, and that the captain of the ship was an older Ace. The enemy of the serial would have been the Metatraxi, a race who were attacking the ship for food. It would be revealed that the ship is a part of Earthaid, a charity that was trying to bring peace and end suffering across the universe. The Doctor would defeat the Metatraxi by tricking them into destroying themselves. Ace would point out that the Doctor has a habit of tricking people, but the Doctor didn't respond and just went back to the TARDIS. When he saw the new exterior, he said that he liked it, and the episode would end with the TARDIS taking off for the next adventure. The serial was written by Ben Aronovich, and it was generally regarded as a decent episode, most fans claiming it was above Battlefield, but not as good as Remembrance of the Daleks. The next serial, Illegal Alien, featured the return of the Cybermen following their last serial in 1988. The serial was 4 parts long, and it ran from the 17th of October 1990 to the 7th of November 1990. The serial was written by Mike Tucker and would have been set in World War II. This was met with some criticism from fans, as the previous year also had a World War II serial. However, the serial is still seen as really good, and it showed the BBC that Doctor Who still had potential. The Cybermen were redesigned for a more slender and alien-like design. This was a bit controversial at the time, but it was eventually liked by most fans. In the serial, the Cybermen would crash land on Earth in a silver sphere, and it was revealed that cyber technology was being used to help aid British soldiers in the war. The Doctor put a stop to this by disabling the Cybermen's emotional blockers. This was seen as a very dark moment for the Doctor, as he would even smile slightly as thousands of Cybermen would scream from the pain, from the emotions, before succumbing to their deaths. The serial would also reveal that the Doctor had been testing Ace since the Dalek invasion in 1963 to train her up to go to a Gallifreyan academy. Inside the TARDIS, Ace finds out and storms off into the corridor as the episode ends. The next serial is called The Nest, and it aired on the 14th of October 1990. The serial was written by Mark Platt, and the serial was set entirely within the Doctor's TARDIS, as the production team wanted to get the most out of the new set, and they also wanted to save some money. The serial saw the Doctor and Ace discuss matters raised in the previous serial. It is a direct continuation, as there is no time passed between the ending of the Illegal Alien and this serial. The serial had no actual enemy, and all conflict was between the Doctor and Ace. The episode would later be regarded as one of the greatest episodes of Doctor Who ever. But at the time, fans felt it was a bit weird having just one episode long for an entire serial. By the end of the episode, the Doctor and Ace hadn't entirely made up, but Ace had decided to go to the academy. Despite still being angry with the Doctor, she said that she enjoyed her time with him and left. The two left on decent terms. Once the Doctor is alone in the TARDIS, he says to himself that all birds leave the nest one day, and then he takes off. The episode would end on a somber note. The next serial was The Crime of the Century, written by Ben Aaronovitch, and it was 2 parts long, airing from the 21st of November to the 28th of November. The serial would introduce Kate, the Doctor's new companion, and it would be the first serial to be produced by Ian Fraser and Nathan Turner as a part of the handover process. The season had been quite dark up to this point, so the production team decided to add this serial to give the season a light-hearted story. The serial was about a cat burglar called Kate who would stumble upon the Doctor, who was waiting inside of a safe for her. Once she opened the safe, the Doctor would say, "What kept you so long?" Suddenly, alarms would be set off, and the Doctor and Kate would have to escape from the building that Kate was trying to rob. Kate would then abandon the Doctor by driving off in her car. The serial didn't take itself too seriously and was regarded as a fun camp serial. However, some fans at the time did not like the tonal shift of the season. The main enemy was a Soviet officer, but was defeated by being arrested. In the final part, the Doctor invited Kate aboard the TARDIS, and the usual scene of the new companion being amazed by the TARDIS occurred. The Doctor would officially welcome Kate on board, and he would take off. The final serial of the season was called Hostage, written by Neil Penswick. It was 4 parts long, airing from the 5th of December 1990 to the 26th of December 1990. The story was about a group of soldiers after a duo of shape-shifting criminals who had stolen a weapon to take to a jungle planet. The Doctor and Kate would be involved into the battle by being taken hostage by the criminals. However, the cliffhanger to the second part would reveal that the Time Lords are in on this and are in fact at war with the inhabitants of the planet. This would shock the Doctor, as he only ever seen the Time Lords as a peaceful race. And the 3rd and 4th parts of the serial would involve the Doctor trying to find out what was happening and why the Time Lords had gone to war. However, he had no luck, and the serial ended in the planet being destroyed. The Doctor, who would watch in the TARDIS, would feel as if he had failed and would vow to never talk to the Time Lords again. Kate would spend a lot of time in the story showing her character off to the audience and would soon become a fan favourite character following the end of the story. The story had been seen as a great story, however some were not too keen on the twist on the Time Lords. However, in the future the story and the twist would become well loved. After this serial, John Nathan Turner was finally able to leave the show and allow Ian Fraser to become the new producer of the show in his own right. The season was praised by fans and critics, however due to a low budget the show was still considered as being cheap. The season had novelisations of all of its stories released in March of the following year, and VHS copies of the season were released over the next few years. The production team stayed the same between season 27 and season 28, besides of course Ian Fraser being full-time producer. The season was made up of 2 4-part serials and 2 3-part serials. The first serial would be called A School for Glory, and it was 4 parts long, airing from the 7th of September 1991 to the 28th of September 1991. The show was moved back to Sundays, and the serial would be set during the First World War, and it would be set in a school. The serial would be very against the war, and would be the first ever pure historical since 1966. The Doctor would spend most of his time in a mood because he's still trying to comprehend what had happened in the last serial. Kate would be separated from the Doctor during the serial and would try and get back to him, also while experiencing the horrors of the war. Finally, the Doctor and Kate would reunite and fly away, both vowing to never speak of the horrors of the war to each other ever again. The serial would be liked by fans, but certain media outlets would claim that it's a bit too violent and dark and that it was bad for kids. Ian Fraser himself would respond to this by saying that now that the show was on at 9 p.m, and it was being targeted towards teenagers and young adults, this shouldn't be an issue. The next serial was called Thin Ice, written by Mark Platt, and was 3 parts long, It aired from the 5th of October to the 19th of October 1991. The season reintroduced the Ice Warriors to the show for the first time since the 70s, and it was originally meant to be for the prior season before being pushed to this season. The serial would show the Ice Warriors trying to invade Earth in the 60s, and was also set in Moscow. The Ice Warriors would try and freeze over the Earth and destroy mankind so they could inhabit the planet. This was, however, stopped by the Doctor and would almost melt them to death before they surrendered and left Earth. The story would be seen as mediocre, but it wasn't really disliked. Kate was characterised a bit differently in this serial, due to it originally being made for Ace. The third serial would be called Avatar, and it was written by David A. McIntee. It aired from the 26th of October to the 9th of November. The serial was about body snatchers who could inhabit the dead bodies of humans. The people who are against the violent season so far were not happy about this season. This is because of the slightly decrepit and rotten bodies that were shown on screen. However, with fans, the story was very well received. The main villain of the story would slowly decay until only a skeleton was left by the third part. However, this story was originally meant to be even more gory and had to be toned down dramatically as Ian Fraser did not want the show to be too dark just yet. The main plot would have been that the Body Snatchers are trying to resurrect an old Silurian god and clone it. But the Doctor put a stop to this, and in a turn of events, helped the Body Snatchers find a new way to live without inhabiting the dead. The final serial of the season was called Elixion, and was written by Robert Mukherjee. This serial was 4 parts long and aired from the 16th of November 1991 to the 7th of December 1991. The serial was the final serial with Sylvester McCoy as the Doctor. The serial would begin with a shot of the Doctor in the TARDIS reading up on the war between the Time Lords and the race from the previous season. Kate would walk into the console room and greet the Doctor, who walks around the console and opens up the door. He explains that they've landed on a planet named Elixion, and he'd always wanted to visit the planet. The two leave and eventually find that the planet inhabits humans and giant beetle-like creatures. The leader of the planet has found out that if you feed humans to the beetles, it increases the intelligence of the beetles. Eventually, after talking to the Doctor for a while, the leader decides to find out what would happen if the Doctor was fed to them. The Doctor is able to defend himself up until the final part. When it seems like the Doctor is about to win, the leader is able to get the beetles to feed on the Doctor. The Doctor would scream for his life as this happens, and eventually, the beetles and the leader leave the Doctor thinking he has died. Of course, the Doctor is not dead, and the regeneration process begins. The Doctor is almost healed up, and there are only a few cuts left on his face. Kate helps the Doctor into the TARDIS by his request, and the Doctor sets the TARDIS into flight, before he falls to the floor. The Doctor quickly explains regeneration to Kate and then closes his eyes, uttering his final words. "Don't worry, everything will be fine." As the Doctor closes his eyes, he is greeted with visions of Mel, Ace, and Kate, who all keep saying his name, until eventually they merge into one voice. Suddenly, the Doctor has woken up in his new body. The new Doctor greets Kate, with his first words being, "Oh, hello. I am the Doctor." The credits play as they have now met the 8th Doctor, played by Richard Griffiths. Season 28 is widely regarded as one of the best seasons of the 20th century by fans, and Elixion is one of the best regeneration stories ever. However, with how violent some of the stories were, a lot of people did write to complain to the BBC. But the BBC would say that none of the serials broke any of the rules of broadcast and therefore were alright to be aired. Novelizations of the serial would release on March of 1992, with VHS copies of the stories being released later in 1992 as part of a box set. So that is all from me today. If you liked the video, do let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye bye now.